Welcome in. We're going to turn back the clock tonight. We're looking at a really specific hour on a specific Sunday that, well, it permanently redefined things. The relationship between media, fear, reality, certainly in America. It's a deep dive into what turned out to be really an accidental national psychological experiment.
Yeah, completely unintended in its scale, anyway.
Right, and one that revealed our deepest anxieties and proved that sometimes fiction can hit harder than fact.
And the date, as we, dive into the source material here, it's absolutely critical. Sunday, October 30th, 1938.
Halloween Eve.
Exactly, Halloween Eve. But the real kicker is the backdrop. America is nearly a decade into the Great Depression. I mean, people are just worn down.
Yeah.
They're looking for comfort, maybe a little escape, and frankly, they're completely used to instability by this point. Life could change on a dime.
And holding it all together, what was the cultural anchor for this weary nation?
It was the radio. Simple as that.
Yeah, much more than just background noise or entertainment. It was the electronic hearth, right? That's people gathered around.
That phrase really captures it. You have to grasp the unique status of radio back then. In 1938, it was the undisputed voice of authority. Connection, too. Our sources show this amazing statistic. By 1935, twice as many American homes had a radio receiver.
Twice as many.
Twice as many as had a telephone. Think about that. For news, for that sense of shared reality, the radio was the pipeline, the main one.
And you can't forget the immediate context, the conditioning of trust that had just happened.
Oh, absolutely key.
Just 1 month before, September 38, the whole country was glued to the radio minute by minute listening to updates from Europe.
The Munich crisis.
Yeah.
Terrifying stuff.
Yeah, every bulletin felt like it could be the start of another world war with Hitler.
Yeah.
Real fear.
So people weren't just passive listeners. They were, in a way, trained. They'd internalized the exact sound of authority cutting in, that sudden interruption, the serious voice, the bulletin format. Right. They were primed, really, to believe that when regular programming got broken into, something urgent and probably scary was actually happening. Out there, in the real world.
That recent conditioning. It's like the fuse, isn't it?
It really is. The fuse for the whole explosion we're about to talk about.
So our mission today, then, is to explore the sources we have detailing Orson Welles's, well, now infamous War of the Worlds broadcast.
Right.
We want to look at it not just as, a spectacular hoax, but as a genuine, even if accidental, national psychological test.
Wow.
What were the specific elements? Technical, emotional? How did they all line up to cause such panic?
It truly was a perfect storm. And to understand how that trap was set, you really have to look at the radio landscape that specific Sunday night. It was incredibly specific.
Let's unpack the dial then. 8:00 p.m., Sunday night, where's America listening? Overwhelmingly, one network, NBC.
NBC was dominant. Absolutely. They had the ratings juggernaut, the Chase and Sanborn hour.
And the star. This is the weird part. The star was a ventriloquist's dummy. Charlie McCarthy.
It sounds bizarre to us now, but Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy were superstars, a cultural phenomenon.
And when you say juggernaut, what does that mean in 38 ratings terms?
We're talking massive, nationwide numbers. The Hoop rating, that was the main audience measurement back then. On this specific night, for Chase and Sanborn, it was a stunning 34.8.
Wow. So basically a third of radios were tuned to them.
Easily. Maybe more of the active listening audience. They were titans. People just didn't tend to dial away from that show.
Okay, so that's NBC. Meanwhile, over on CBS, things are a bit quieter.
Much quieter, yeah. CBS had the Mercury Theater on the air. This was led by a, 23-year-old theatrical wunderkind, Orson Welles.
Young guy.
Very young. And their show was seen as the artsier choice, adapting classic literature, that kind of thing.
And the nature of the show itself is important too, right? It wasn't sponsored?
Exactly. It was a sustaining show, no commercial sponsor. That gave it a certain intellectual air, maybe fewer interruptions. But it also meant the audience was tiny.
How tiny are we talking?
Sources say Wells usually got less than 4% of the audience share. And some internal polls suggested maybe only about 2% were actually tuned in right at the start at 8:00 p.m.
That initial tiny audience.
Yeah.
That's the crucial shield, isn't it? Because at 8:00 p.m., the CBS announcer did read the disclaimer.
He did. One single sentence that would have prevented everything for anyone who actually heard it.
The Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on the air in The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Simple as that. If you heard that, you knew it was a play, you knew it was fiction.
But only 2% heard it. The other 98% were still chuckling at Charlie McCarthy over on NBC.
Exactly. Now comes the critical moment. the tiny, almost accidental piece of scheduling that changed everything. It's about 8:01 p.m.
Okay.
The main comedy bit on NBC, the Bergen and McCarthy routine, finishes up. The host transitions to the next segment. It's a musical interlude. The baritone, Nelson Eddy.
Nelson Eddy. Nice voice, but not comedy.
Right, and for millions of listeners across America, that was the signal. The funny part's over. Maybe time to see what else is on.
It's the 1938 version of channel surfing, basically, but with a big clunky dial.
Precisely. All across the country, hands are reaching for those dials, twisting them, looking for something else. Dial surfing.
And when they land on CBS, what do they hear?
They don't hear, like, dramatic opening music for a play. They land abruptly, midstream into something that sounds, well, oddly official and completely real.
The format switch is instant, disorienting.
Yeah. They tune in late, missing the intro, and what they hear is this dry, almost boring scientific report.
Delivered like it's actual news. An interruption.
Exactly, like a news bulletin breaking into some background music that quickly faded down. No drama in the voice initially, just authority.
We have the specifics of what they heard, right?
We do. They hear Professor Pearson, supposedly from Princeton, relaying info, something about a seismograph shock near Princeton, New Jersey, almost earthquake intensity.
Sounds official. Princeton. Seismograph.
Right. And then it quickly moves to talk about strange explosions observed on the planet Mars. Again, the language academic scientist, it's all designed to sound like irrefutable fact.
It's a perfect narrative ambush.
Yeah.
You miss the one sentence that says play, and you walk right into something presented using the exact trusted language of breaking news.
They weren't panicking yet, not most of them. More like curious, intrigued. Something weird is happening near Princeton.
But that intrigue, that was about to get weaponized into sheer terror.
And the structure of the broadcast over the next, say, half hour or so, that's what our sources really flag as the masterstroke.
Wells and his team, they built this thing relentlessly.
It's an accelerating nightmare, yeah. And crucially, they mimic the jumpy, erratic quality of real breaking news. Cutting back and forth, calm studio announcer, then suddenly a frantic reporter on the scene.
Let's track that timeline because the pacing is key. Around 8:03 p.m., just a minute after the dial surfers arrive, that's the first hook.
Right. The field reporter, Carl Phillips, supposedly in Grover's Mill, New Jersey, his voice isn't panicked yet, more raw shock. Curiosity.
What does he say?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most terrifying thing I have ever witnessed. Someone's crawling out of the hollow top. 2 luminous discs on their eyes.
Chilling. You go from seismographs to glowing eyes crawling out of a metal cylinder.
It grabs you. And this is where curiosity starts to tip over. We get those anecdotes, right? The father in Newark saying, honey, turn this up. What's going on over in Jersey?
Yeah, the reaction isn't run away yet. It's lean in, listen closer.
But the terror ramps up fast. By 8:01 p.m., 6 minutes later, the description gets much more alien. Disturbing.
What's Phillips reporting now?
He says something's wriggling out of the shadow like a gray snake. The body is large as a bear and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, it's indescribable.
Indescribable. That lets everyone's imagination run wild, right?
Yeah.
Filling in the blanks with their worst fears.
Absolutely. And this is when the real-world impact starts showing up. The switchboards.
The phone lines.
Police stations, especially in Jersey and New York, they start getting flooded with calls. Newspaper operators are confused. They've got nothing on the wires about this. People are calling in asking, is this real? Is this actually happening? The anxiety is spreading person to person now.
And then the spark hits the powder keg. 8:21 p.m., just 2 minutes later.
This is the moment. The reporter's professional composure just shatters. His voice cracks, rises into what sounds like genuine, raw terror. He's describing the Martian machine firing its weapon.
The heat ray.
Yeah. There's a jet of flame springing from it. It strikes him head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame. Now the whole field's caught fire. He's screaming by the end of it.
That sound, the trusted reporter losing it. That's the trigger.
That's the psychological kill switch for a lot of people. The authority figure confirming the danger is absolute, immediate, and overwhelming. And the reactions documented are just chaos.
Like in Newark.
Yeah, sources detail this one block in Newark where more than 20 families suddenly rush out into the street, clutching wet towels over their faces.
Why wet towels?
They were convinced, based on the descriptions of the heat ray and smoke, that it was a poison gas attack. Then you have Harlem, large crowds pouring into the streets, people shouting, crying, convinced the world's ending. The CBS switchboard itself is completely overwhelmed, kaput.
And what really cements it for many, the final nail in the coffin of disbelief, comes just a few minutes later, 8:25 p.m.
Right. The broadcast cuts back to the studio announcer. But his tone is different now. Grave. Shaken.
And he says what?
He states, with total certainty, these things are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. But the critical piece, he adds that the New Jersey State Militia is mobilizing. They're calling out the troops.
The National Guard. That sounds official.
That's the stamp of reality for so many listeners. Mentioning the state militia, the National Guard, suddenly it's not just some weird phenomenon. It's a military emergency. The government is responding.
And we know that actual guardsmen heard this.
Yeah, there are reports, well documented, of actual New Jersey National Guardsmen hearing this on the radio and calling their armories, trying to report for duty. Ready to fight Martians because the official channel seemed to confirm it.
Incredible. And the military response in the broadcast?
Yeah.
It doesn't go well.
It's a catastrophe. By 8:35 p.m., the show delivers this absolutely shocking news. The complete rout of the Army.
How's it described?
The announcer details the battle at Grover's Mill, claims 7,000 men pitted against a single fighting machine, and the result, 120 known survivors.
Just 120 out of 7,000?
Yeah. The rest, he says, strewn over the battle area, crushed and trampled to death, or burned to cinders by its heat ray. A total massacre.
That confirms absolute vulnerability, doesn't it, if the Army can be wiped out like that?
Exactly. There's no defense. But the reach of this fear, geographically, is maybe best shown by that story from Concrete, Washington, way across the country.
Right. Tell us about that.
So this man in Concrete, Washington, he's listening. He hears the report about the Army being annihilated, total deceit.
And then something else happens.
Pure, bizarre coincidence. At that exact moment, as he's hearing about the U.S. military being crushed, a real, unrelated power failure hits the town of Concrete.
No way.
Plunges the entire town into sudden darkness and silence. Right as the radio tells him the Army is gone.
So what does he do?
He instantly assumes the invasion is happening there now. He grabs a shotgun, runs outside into the blackout, ready to defend his family from Martians he believes have just arrived.
Wow. Reality and fiction just collide in the most terrifying way possible.
It's the perfect storm, like we said.
Yeah.
And then comes the final piece of authoritative audio, the thing that pushes the hysteria to its absolute peak. Around 8:45 p.m.
What was that?
It's the voice of a government official. Somber, serious, and clearly mimicking the famous, reassuring cadence of President Roosevelt's fireside chats.
But it wasn't FDR.
No. He's identified as the Secretary of the Interior, and he delivers this address to the nation, calling for unity, courage, confronting this destructive adversary. It sounds like the president mobilizing the country for war.
So for anyone still doubting, that sounds like the ultimate confirmation.
Absolutely. And the result is just mass hysteria breaking out in pockets across the country. That woman running into the church in Indianapolis, screaming, "New York is destroyed, the world is ending." You have the New York Times switchboard, a major news hub, just completely swamped. 875 calls in minutes.
And that question from the guy in Dayton, Ohio.
Chilling, isn't it? Gets through to an operator, frantic, and asks, what time will it be the end of the world? Not if, but when. The fear was total. They weren't thinking about survival anymore.
Just an unbelievable chain of events. But, okay, let's step back now. How did they do this? How did a bunch of actors pull off this psychological coup?
That's where the analysis gets really interesting. The sources make it clear. The genius wasn't the story itself. Martians, okay, kind of pulpy. The genius was the how. The technical brilliance of the deception.
Wells hijacked the language of truth, you put it.
Precisely. They didn't just tell a story. They built a perfect high-fidelity simulation of a breaking news event, using all the tricks the public had just been conditioned to trust implicitly during Munich.
So what were those components?
Well, think about it. No narrator saying, "Meanwhile, back at the farm." No. It was all fragmented reports. You had the on-site reporters like Carl Phillips giving those immediate, breathless reactions.
Right.
You had interviews with academic experts, Professor Pearson from Princeton. Sounds legit. And confirmations from high-ranking government officials like the Secretary of the Interior. It mirrored the exact rhythm, the exact structure, the emotional ups and downs of the Munich crisis coverage people had just experienced.
And they used the structure of radio itself against the listener too, didn't they? The station break thing.
Oh, that was brilliant. A masterstroke of manipulation. Everyone listening to radio in 1938 knew the rules. Standard dramas, sponsored shows, they always had a station break at 8:30 p.m. on the dot. For station ID, maybe an ad.
Like clockwork.
Exactly. Wells knew this. He deliberately pushed the first official break in the War of the Worlds until almost 40 minutes into the show, way past 8:30.
So for the people who tuned in late who thought it was real,
That missing 8.30 break was terrifying proof. A real national emergency, a real invasion, wouldn't stop for station identification or a coffee commercial, would it?
right, the absence of the normal break confirmed the presence of an abnormal reality.
It's incredibly clever. It turns the audience's own media literacy against them. And then there's the performance quality, the sound of the horror.
Wells coached the actors for that.
Yeah. Especially Frank Riddick, the actor playing Carl Phillips, the reporter at Grover's Mill. Wells had him listen over and over to a specific recording.
Which one?
The actual radio broadcast from 1937 of the Hindenburg disaster, the explosion of the Zeppelin.
The Herbert Morrison report. Oh, the humanity.
That exact one. They weren't aiming for stagey drama. They wanted that sound, the sound of a professional reporter's voice cracking, his composure completely disintegrating into pure, spontaneous human horror. That raw sound, it bypasses logic. It hits you right in the gut.
Which brings us right to the psychology of it.
Yeah.
What did the studies afterwards find? I know Hadley Cantrell at Princeton jumped on this immediately.
He did. Cantrell's study was groundbreaking, really foundational for media studies. He wanted to know why people believed something so, on the face of it, absurd.
And what did he find?
He found that for a big chunk of the listeners, their critical ability, their capacity for rational thought just got completely short-circuited. The radio was such a trusted source, the voice of authority, that the evidence coming through their ears, the reporters screaming the official announcements, it felt more real, more immediate, more valid than their own logic telling them, wait, Martians? Really?
So the audio overrode their own common sense.
For many, yes. Cantrell actually classified listeners. You had the ones who checked the evidence against other facts, looked out the window, maybe called someone who heard the beginning. They tended not to panic.
Okay.
But then you had the group whose critical thinking just dissolved. They didn't check external reality. Instead, they checked internal consistency or social proof. They'd call a neighbor, hear the neighbor was scared too.
Reinforcing the fear.
Exactly. Or they'd run out into the street and see other people running and panicked. Their fear was validated by the fear around them. It created this feedback loop, what Cantrell called a collective delusion.
Did things like education play a role?
Cantrell suggested it did. He argued that listeners who were, quote, less critical, often those with lower levels of formal education, might have been more susceptible. Not because they were unintelligent, but perhaps because they lacked the ingrained habit or the tools to rigorously question information coming from a source they deeply trusted.
So, the broadcast itself, the sound of fear, that was the match. But the analysis suggests America was basically a powder keg just waiting for that spark.
That's the tinderbox theory. And yeah, it's arguably the deepest insight from the sources. The Martians, they weren't the real monster here. They were just a convenient stand-in.
A stand-in for what?
For the anxieties already simmering, the public was absolutely conditioned, psychologically primed, as we said, by Munich just weeks before. They were expecting news of a sudden, devastating invasion by a technologically superior, faceless enemy.
So the Martians just filled the slot Germany might have occupied in their minds.
Pretty much. The template was there. Terrifying advanced warfare coming from over there. The Martian tripods just replaced the potential German planes or tanks. The psychological slot was ready and waiting.
And it wasn't just the threat of war, was it? The Depression itself.
Absolutely crucial. You can't separate this from the Great Depression. 10 years of grinding instability. Your life could be destroyed overnight by huge, impersonal forces you couldn't see or control.
Bank failures, mass unemployment, the Dust Bowl.
Exactly. Invisible, unstoppable forces that felt alien to the average person's experience. So when the radio announces that other vast, impersonal forces from another planet are arriving,
With cold, mechanical tripods and silent heat rays.
it doesn't necessarily sound like pure fantasy. It might have resonated horribly with the feeling that your world could be upended at any moment by something incomprehensible and overpowering.
The Martians become a metaphor.
A perfect, terrifying metaphor for both mechanized warfare and economic collapse. The faceless fears that were already haunting people, it gave shape to the shapeless anxiety of the era.
It was almost cathartic in a horrifying way.
You could argue that. The
Yeah.
broadcast didn't create the deep, grinding fear of the 1930s. It just tapped into it, gave it a name and a face, however indescribable that face was supposed to be.
Okay, so shifting to the day after, Halloween morning, 1938, what happens?
Media frenzy. Absolute frenzy. Orson Welles wakes up, he's 23 years old, and he is suddenly the most talked about man in America. Overnight.
The newspapers must have gone wild.
Oh, they had a field day. This was juicy stuff. Headlines screaming panic, the New York Times. Radio listeners in panic, taking war drama as fact. The New York Daily News, always more punchy. Fake radio air attack throws U.S. into panic.
And those initial reports included some pretty dramatic claims, right? Suicides, heart attacks.
They did. Lots of sensational stories about mass stampedes, people dying of fright. Most of those, when investigated later, turned out to be unsubstantiated or wildly exaggerated.
Which leads us to this other layer, the media rivalry twist. Modern analysis suggests the scale of the panic itself might have been inflated.
Considerably inflated, yes. And likely for a very specific reason.
Which was?
The newspaper industry. You have to remember, newspapers were in a fierce battle with this new medium, radio. They were losing advertising dollars hand over fist to the networks. National brands were shifting their budgets.
So radio was the enemy, commercially speaking.
It was the upstart rival, yeah. In this incident, it was ammunition. The newspapers seized the opportunity to paint radio as irresponsible, dangerous, reckless, a medium that couldn't be trusted.
Unlike the sober, reliable newspapers, presumably?
That was the narrative they pushed. Look what this crazy radio thing did. Stick with good old print. So there's this deep irony.
The fake news of the invasion is immediately followed by the probably exaggerated, possibly partly fake news about the scale of the panic caused by the invasion. The story about the panic became a tool for the press to discredit radio.
Fascinating. What about Welles himself? He had to face the music the next day, right?
Oh, yeah. CBS executives were terrified. Lawsuits, FCC crackdowns. They hustled Welles into this press conference. Huge pressure on this young guy.
How did he handle it?
He gave a performance. Apparently, he looked exhausted, maybe genuinely was, but he played the part of the earnest, naive artist, totally shocked, deeply regretful.
He claimed he had no idea people would believe it. He insisted. Said the story was too old-fashioned, too silly, just a bit of Halloween fun. He tried to frame it not as a deliberate hoax, but as this, profound social lesson they'd stumbled on by accident.
But later on, the story changed a bit.
Completely. We know now from later interviews and sources close to him that he was, as one director put it, acting his brains out at that press conference. Secretly, he was apparently quite delighted by the chaos.
He admitted it eventually.
Oh, yes. Decades later, he basically confessed that while maybe not the specifics of the panic, the potential for widespread confusion and publicity was merrily anticipated by us all. They knew they were playing with fire.
So regardless of his intent, deliberate or just reckless fun, there were real consequences, official fallout.
Definitely. The government reacted quickly. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, launched a formal investigation straight away, demanded the script, recordings, everything.
Was there talk of censorship?
Serious talk in Congress, yeah. Calls for strict new laws to regulate what could be broadcast, especially anything mimicking news formats.
Did anything actually happen to Welles or CBS?
No formal sanctions in the end, no fines, no licenses revoked. But the sources are pretty much unanimous on the bigger impact. This incident forever changed broadcasting.
How so?
It marked the end of radio's innocent era, if you like. Networks immediately put in new, much stricter rules. Clear station IDs became mandatory. Explicit disclaimers were required for any fictional show using news techniques.
The Wild West days were over.
Pretty much. And more profoundly, it forced a collective American realization. Media wasn't just a passive window on the world. It was an active force. It could reach into your home, into your head, and shape, bend, sometimes completely shatter your sense of reality.
That trust was broken.
That absolute naive trust, yeah, it was gone, forever changed.
And that lesson, that unsettling idea that media can actively manipulate reality.
Aren't they?
Maybe that's why the myth of the panic is still so strong.
I think that's exactly right. The sensationalized version of events, the story amplified by the newspapers, a whole nation running screaming, that narrative became the enduring cultural touchstone. It's a cautionary tale about media power.
In a way, the exaggerated story, the myth, became even more powerful and lasting than the original broadcast or even the actual limited panic.
The ghost of the hoax haunts us more than the hoax itself. It's a constant reminder of how susceptible we can be.
So, okay, that was 1938, a Halloween prank, essentially, that became this terrifying mirror held up to a nation's fears, all because of one single, highly trusted voice coming out of a box in the living room.
Right. You look back, maybe think, wow, simpler time, more naive, information from one central authoritative source.
But compare that to now.
Exactly. That night, one authoritative voice, one source, was enough to convince thousands of people of something impossible. Today, we don't have one voice.
And millions.
Millions of voices, yeah. Shouting for attention right there in our pockets 24/7.
And we're navigating this constant flood where context gets stripped away all the time, where algorithms are designed to maximize engagement, emotional response, not necessarily truth.
And the tech itself. Deep fakes, AI generating entire news stories, videos, things that look and sound completely real but aren't.
So it raises that final question, doesn't it? Building on Cantrell's work back then.
It really does. The people in 1938, you could say they were victims of a media format, a technology they didn't fully understand yet. Its power was new.
Are we any different today?
Yeah.
Really? With all our tech savvy?
Is that line between what's real and what's manufactured any clearer for us now, despite having infinite information at our fingertips? Or are we all potentially just one really convincing broadcast away?
One perfectly viral video.
One perfectly targeted social media post away from our own version of Grover's Mill, our own collective delusion.
And something to definitely think about next time you're scrolling.
Absolutely.
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.